Mortdog just revealed 4 new artifacts coming in set 11. Firstly, we have Fishbones, which doubles the holder's attack range but makes them always target random enemies. Then we have Innovating Locket, which gives the holder 2% of the total mana whenever they're hit by an attack, and upon casting, the holder regens 20% of the max HP over 3 seconds. There's also Mittens, which grants 100% attack speed, increased movement speed, and 20% damage reduction alongside reducing the holder's size. And finally, we have Corrupt Vampiric Scepter, which prevents the holder from casting their ability, but in return, the holder's attacks deal an additional 50% attack damage and heal the holder for the damage dealt. So overall, these new artifacts look amazing, and these are only 4 of the total 20 they'll be adding in set 11. However, the earliest they'll be with us is patch 14.9 or May 1st. But that won't stop me. I've already had some great ideas on which units will be ideal with these items and how impactful these items can be. For example, did you notice how most of these revealed artifacts are mostly for AD carries? I believe the AP items haven't been revealed yet, probably because they're the most ambitious and creative. And hopefully there's also more artifacts for tanks, as the current roster doesn't have that many. But if you're excited for these new artifacts, make sure you subscribe because you already know that I'll be cooking and spamming PvE once they drop. So let's go over Fishbones first. This item will be really good on AD range carries that apply on-hit effects, since they should be able to apply these effects to every unit on the enemy board with their range being doubled. And those base stats are really good. That's more attack speed than Red Buff and slightly less AD than Deathblade. So from just that alone, this item has extreme value. But who's this item best on? Well, the most obvious answer is Irelia, because she already has 7 range, great scaling with AD and attack speed, and her autos reduce armor by 30% for 5 seconds. Honestly, I think Irelia is just the best user of this item, especially when she has Morello or Red Buff, since she will be applying those on-hit effects more often than any other unit. But while Irelia is probably the best option, there are still other units that would use this item extremely well. For example, Kai'Sa or Sivir, especially with 4 Trickshot active. Both of these units alter their current target, but Kai'Sa particularly will be able to nuke backlines if her current random target before her ult is near the backline. And Kai'Sa can very easily apply on-hit effects through the Trickshot ricochets or the Ink Shadow items. So Kai'Sa is a great option with this artifact due to her burst, how soon you can hit her, and the utility through the Ink Shadow items. But realistically, this artifact should just be good on any unit that ults the current target. For example, Ashe ults her primary target and the 3 nearest enemies to them. So like Kai'Sa, Ashe should be able to melt backlines. But I do not think you should ever build this item on units like Senna. Senna's ult goes through her current target and deals secondary damage to units behind them. So if Senna randomly ults the backline, that part of her ult is completely wasted. Similarly, while this item has incredible potential on Kindred, as she ults her primary target and the nearest enemy to them, unfortunately Kindred dashes away from her current target. So Kindred could put herself next to enemy melee units, which usually isn't a good thing. And I did initially think Zyra had potential, but her vines target the nearest enemy, which is common for a lot of AP casters, and they won't really care much for this item because they usually target the largest clump and they don't really gain any benefits from the AD, although that attack speed is quite nice. Although Zoe and Syndra do ult the current target, so it could be great for them. And lastly, I think this item is generally bad for melee carries as they want to focus and burst their target down. If they're stuck on a tank, they'll just randomly target another tank and still get stuck. The only exception to this I can think of is Yone, since he has range scaling and can dash the backline. But that could also be due to any item being good on Yone right now. He's so broken. Next up, we have Innovating Locket, which initially seems like a great item for tanks with huge mana cost ults like Ornn or Nautilus. However, this item actually enables my favorite tech in this set, and that's frontlining your range carry. If you haven't already seen how amazing the frontline tech is, then check out this video. But even without this tech, this item will be great on any unit with a large mana pool. Of course, you have your tanks like Diana, Amumu, Ornn, Galio, Kench, and Annie, where you want to reduce the downtime between their ults as much as possible since they're so high value, but you also want to keep them sustained. This artifact is absolutely perfect for that, but this item also allows for units like Soraka to keep casting and sustained in the front line, which pairs well with Sage, her passive AP scaling, and her burst damage. However, the big problem here are those base stats on this item. These stats are so low that this item will cause a deficit on the unit you put it on. Only 150 HP and 15 mana may not be enough for some frontline range carries. It will still be okay on units like Soraka and potentially Azir since he gets HP from Dryad, bad, but generally it'll probably be just better to throw this item on a tank, especially if they go by the name of Ornn. But also boosted carries like Riven and Sylas will likely love this item since they have low mana cost ults and high HP pools, so they could probably just live forever through this item. Hear me out, but what if you went blue buff Shojin innovating Locket Riven? Since she never stops casting, would she just heal infinitely? But before I dwell on that question too long, let's talk about Mittens. This artifact is probably the most straightforward out of the bunch, since the damage reduction isn't useful for range carries and the attack speed isn't necessary for tanks. That leaves melee carries, which all of these stats are perfect for, of which the first ones that come to mind are Udyr, Wukong, maybe Lissandra, Kayn, Lee Sin, Sylas, and of course I can't forget about Yone. So yeah, as I mentioned, this item is pretty simple and the options are pretty narrow. The only thing that I'm curious about with this item is what happens if you stack it with Tiny but Deadly. Would you even be able to see this microscopic unit on your board? But now, finally, we have Corrupted Vampiric Scepter. Again, this item is intended for an attack damage carry, but in this case, this item opens up the potential of stopping units from ulting intentionally, which is especially useful if those units have bad ultimates. For example, through this item, Tristana will function as a normal attack damage carry and she will never int by potentially jumping into danger. She'll just sit back and auto away, although she probably won't gain the extra AD from her ult. Similarly, you can do the same thing to Caitlyn and stop her from ulting, which negates that weird lockout time she has after casting. She just stands around doing nothing for a bit. It's really weird. And there's also the potential for Gnar with this artifact, since he has a passive that gives him more AD. So Gnar will be dealing a ton of damage through his autos and in turn healing a lot. But honestly, I think this item is really limiting in this set because a lot of AD carries have really valuable ults that you don't really want to be disabling. The only unit that would love this item is, again, Irelia. In my opinion, Vampiric Scepter seems a little too good for Irelia, and I can't really think of who else would even be close. I know Riot don't mind these new artifacts being narrow with limited use cases, but this seems way too narrow for me. Maybe I'm not just seeing it, but this item in particular seems way too good for very specific units. But having said that, overall, these artifacts look amazing. If the other 16 artifacts are anything like these 4, then the state of TFT can completely transform with new, fun, and wacky ways to play the game. And seeing as how Whitrock is the designer behind these artifacts, I have no doubt that these items will do exactly that. So I cannot wait for more reveals, especially for the AP artifacts. I feel like those in particular will be game breaking. And honestly, while these artifacts do bring up concerns for balance, Riot can easily add levers like they already have for said balance. But even then, for now, I won't care because these items will just be so fun to play around with. I mean, I've already had a lot of fun making my own versions of artifacts that could be in TFT. I think I made around 11 or 12 of these artifacts, which was really fun. All of which are in the Goody Takes channel in my Discord, but there's also a Reddit post which I'll link in the description. But amongst these, Riot can easily make items like EI Giddy, which would completely transform range carries and make you frontline them, which is, if you haven't already noticed, an idea that I absolutely love. But yeah, if you want to see the others, join the Discord or check them out on Reddit. And overall, I cannot wait for this patch. I am so excited. But with that note, I will pass over the questions to you guys. What do you think about these new artifacts? Who do you reckon will be the best users of them? Are you excited to play around with them? And do you think there will be a balancing nightmare? Let me know in the comments and remember to subscribe. Anyway, check out these other videos if you want to see more from me. And as always, thank you for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.